the issue is, and I think this is also something that we need to think about. Now, we're talking about a payout. You come in, I have some doubts about yourself. I have some doubts. You are not the right person. You bring in 51 million US dollars. I have doubt with you. And when you are going out, you still ask for the same money. I want my money back. Because this is what it is. We should have doubted and refused that 48 million US dollars at that particular point in time. Because you're saying that we doubted whether these people really existed. So, and that's why the question when they are exiting about refunding their money, that due diligence, I think at that point we didn't find it necessary at that point.
Just to close it so that you're able to certify this committee,
yes.
Where would you direct this committee to in terms of searching for the due diligence? Who should have done it? Who should this committee be speaking to? Because we won't allow for this can to be kicked down the road further.
Now,
yes.
What I know is that when Jamhuri Holdings came in, there were a lot of correspondence and details about even the shareholders agreement. Those details should be available at the National Treasury. There should be documentation for you available at the National Treasury about those correspondences between the parties. So, because this is a shareholder issue, the Jamhuri Holdings, when the Origin Telecom was getting out, and Jamhuri Holdings coming in, there were new shareholders agreement that was signed between the two shareholders, Jamhuri Holdings and the Government of the Republic of Kenya. At that point, it is the point that I am sure there must have been a due diligence report. But I didn't dig into it. If one would want, you could ask Treasury to provide that information. Yeah. About that due diligence. Now, yes.
Just what it is. These people at Treasury were your colleagues. So I'm assuming where you sit, there is someone who sits the next floor, and you talk. Because outside, having worked with these people for so long, naturally you have those conversations around what are you doing. Like I know Honorable Biego has gone to his constituency. I know Mheshimiwa is going for a meeting in Mombasa. Just without, even if you're not so sure, who do you think, and the other think, did sit to negotiate for this buyout on behalf of government of Kenya? Because there must be some people, there must have been a meeting that sat down. Do you know who these people are?
There was no meeting.
There was no meeting.
They have not heard about a meeting, no. There is no meeting.
Okay, you may proceed to answer the other questions.
So all negotiations, deliberations, considerations were all done virtually.
They must be done online. I have not heard about any meeting physical meeting about this discussion. No. That's where I was coming to. The signing of documents, like the share transfer agreements. They were first signed by the Jamhuri Holdings, sent through courier to National Treasury. National Treasury signed this bit. There is no meeting that was held to sign those documents. Signatures were done and the documents transmitted to UK for signature. So there was no single sitting that people sat to sign documents. Yeah.
Okay, none, and then an intervention from Honorable Kivasu, kindly. Engineer, please just indulge us. This is for clarity. Just allow members to just get this clear so that your responses are not taken out of context.
Yes, Chairman, do I have the floor?
Yes.
So, sorry for coming late. I was here and I'll still be very humble because this is the first day of Ramadan. And this question, so I'm disadvantaged. This question might have been asked. Engineer Kamau, professional, You're an engineer, isn't it? I don't know whether that question was asked. Yeah, good. And in your opinion, the role you are tasked, you are assigned in the Ministry of Finance, investment and what? Public investment and portfolio management. Taking into account the role of an engineer and your job description, did it ever dawn on you that there was a professional mismatch? And meaning you must have been a special Kenyan to be assigned the role of an economist, financial expert, an investment analyst, an engineer. I thought your best place will have been Ministry of Roads, Ministry of Public Works. So many to that extent. Kenya Power. Okay, I'm just two. Taking into account the title and actually of your job description, I thought you will also be the entry point of any investment, and here you are saying you have never met these individuals. Just as a comment. And Chairman, something that I have noted, of all the witnesses who appeared before us, before even I make that comment, have you consulted any lawyer before you prepared this, or this is your own? Chairman is my tech, and this committee will unearth this. These people are using one source. All these documents are prepared by one person. So meaning, there must be a person seated somewhere in an office, giving them information to come and lie to this committee. So the face of it, at certain stage, this committee must invoke Article 125 and declare some of these individuals as uncooperative. Because if you have somebody here for over 2-3 hours and what he's saying is just the same thing that has no head and tail, like we end up just wasting our time. Because none of us has been truthful enough to tell us why this thing did not originate from Telkom, whether they have met these individuals physically, whether they know some of the players, whether there are physical meetings, all of them. The answer is one. I don't know whether you have noted even from the former CS. Meaning, this is something that has been theorized, harmonized, memorized, and they were told, go and lie to this bunch of members of parliament. I think something is not adding up. So I think the sooner, the truth is what shall set you free. You may have retired, you may have resigned, you may have voluntarily gone with the former regime, but I think this committee is entitled to nothing but the truth. So as you conclude, just think out of the box. These are great minds. Just think out of the box. We may be laughing, we may be listening, they may be, but at the end of the day, we know what is not making any sense. So I want, as you conclude, I really want to believe with you as a senior citizen. Just tell us the truth. Thank you, Chairman.
Honorable Kenan, I'll have an aside with you just as we break for lunch on a comment that you have made. But we want to hear from the Honorable Kevasu. Yes. No, these are adjoining questions. They are clarifications being sought so that he makes a final submission.
Thank you, Chair. If I listen to Engineer Stanley Well, and especially on that agreement execution, and you said that agreement was executed by Jamhuri Holdings and then sent to the ministry for your execution as well. I'm also hearing nobody in Treasury has ever met the same Paul Cunningham. And you are telling us somebody has been releasing documents to the ministry, and you people who have been executing and returning them to him. Sincerely speaking, are you honest? How do you execute documents, and many documents, for so long without even meeting the person? Two, on what Mheshimiwa Kenan is saying, this document has a lot of references on letters, and you said you are not attaching anything here because you are not in the ministry. Are you telling me all the letters you are referencing to in this document, you have them in your house? Where did you get them from? Come out clear and tell us the real thing. Thank you.
the questions introduce a new dynamic on a thematic area you might want to respond to. Is there a puppet master controlling every response that this committee has been getting? Would you believe that there could be a puppet master?
Let me be very honest and be very candid. I am the writer of this brief. I have not consulted anybody. I'm the author. If you ask me questions because I have touched these documents, I know. I don't need anybody to tell me what to say. And what I'm saying is what I know about it. It's nobody else who has written it. It's myself. And I have not even consulted anybody about it. But the facts are facts, the way they are. But I also want to bring you to the attention of the signing of documents. I know legal people have different ways of looking at things, but in the era of COVID, the 2 years of COVID, a lot of business transactions happened. And this is a norm. People have been doing business, setting documents for signing and bringing them back for signing. And then getting, as long as you have things like power of attorney, signed by authenticated lawyers in London or wherever, then you are okay. You say you are okay for that point. So this is the 2 years of COVID taught people a different lesson. You don't have to see people to do business and to sign agreements. And this is what has happened. And we have done many transactions without looking at people. So this is not the only one. And I think that's what I want to bring out. So, and I think that's some of the issues that were raised about Mr. Cunnington and whether we actually met this person. I have never met Cunnington. And I said, Safaricom, we are 35%. I was looking after those shares. I've never met. I can't tell you who is the owner of Vodafone. I don't know. I've never met them. But we do business every day. And government does business with them every day. But you don't have to know the owner in the physical to be able to transact business. And that's what I say. Yeah. Now, there was also a question on what's the ownership of Telkom today. If you ask me, because Jamhuri Holdings have signed the transfer forms, who are the 60%, the National Treasury has signed that transfer form. The only thing that is remaining is the change of CR12, and that requires a resolution from Telkom. Now, Telkom the Telkom, the board of directors under the company law, are the ones who effect the changes in a company register. Now, but as far as we are concerned, this 60% shareholding currently are owned by government of Kenya. And I said, as I was making my presentation, transfer of shares, once you get a resolution, is one day event. And I have been doing them when I was in government, in the office. One day, going to the company registry and having that CR form 12 with submissions and everything else. So to me, this is a matter that can be concluded quickly. And I think the only reason we got from Telkom by then was they were not properly constituted. And I'm sure the new directors, the two directors, their terms of office have already been renewed. So there is no excuse from Telkom not to deal with those resolutions unless there has been new direction, which I don't. But that is, as far as I'm concerned, the shareholding currently, it is 100% GUK. But the only thing that has not been done is the effect on CR12. Now, then there was the issue of Helios. I think there has also been an issue about Helios, why they wanted to exit and why was the hurry to exit. And I think if you look at perhaps it is the payment that came in almost wrong timing. But you can see Jamhuri Holdings had already expressed their will, they made their decision to exit in July 2021. It actually took a year for government to actually make that decision and conclude that transaction. So there was a lot of time taken by government. It's only that possibly it coincided with the July and the period for election. But there was no, it was not something that was done.
For the benefit of this committee,
yes.
How would you respond to someone who would say that government literally bullied Jamhuri Holdings out of Telkom, right from their intent to partner and merger with Airtel and the frustrations that they met there, and all the way to how they came to now wanting out because of something that was, and you know that it's normally a very convenient place to hide national security concerns, because that one looks unquestionable, although this is parliament and parliament is able to actually lift that stone to see what is hiding under that national security concern. But what would be your response that Jamhuri was bullied, antagonized, coerced out of Telkom, frustrated out of Telkom?
I think that question, Chair, maybe I can only be able to give the facts related to the, but I can't make that opinion because but what I can say, I think from the letter that Jamhuri Holdings Limited wrote in July 2021, they did express frustration by government, and it's not by expression of government frustration. It actually happened because the Airtel Telkom mobile business combination, that was denied by government. Yeah, they because of what, of course, I say the security reasons. Yeah, so that's the only fact I can say because they did express that. Yeah, a fact. Yeah, but I can't be able to opine on that. Yeah, yeah.
Let's attend to the other questions.
Okay, let me try to attend to the other questions. Then of course there was the issue about the clarification as to whether the issue about the 239 and 31, and that's the one I wanted to clarify. And the chair, I remember we started this with the chair, that currently I would expect the annual financial statements for Telkom Kenya to hold this the 239. You can be able to identify the 239 million US dollars as loaned already to Jamhuri, now being transferred to the government of Kenya, and the 51 million US dollars. This should be reflected in the annual financial statement. So it's not just a statement that we are making that this money is actually owned by Telkom owns the shareholders, but it should be reflected. And I know I had seen the financial statements for the previous years. This had been reflected. Now this money is not being forfeited. It is not being written off. Now, once the innovation has been completed and the shares have been transferred to government, and government owns this 100%, this will be in the books of government, that the government, Telkom owns government, these 239 and 51. Now, if for any eventuality in future, government want to do a balance sheet restructuring for Telkom, which of course, if there are any write-offs, that should come to Parliament, because the Parliament has the obligation to clear some of the write-offs, the write-offs for loans in parastatus. So I think there is no write-off. So this money is still going to be a part of the books. Then of course, I think there is also a question about the background. I think there was a question as to whether we actually did a due diligence when we were actually making the payments on who actually were paying, and I think the way I would want to address that is that the issues to do with the payments and who is being paid, and the processing of payments and the controls of payments, I think that's handled by the accounting services, and I think. My former colleague Bernard Dongo has been invited, and I think these are some of the issues that he should be able to clarify about the payment. Did you, by the time you are preparing vouchers and things like that, confirm that actually the payments were actually going to the eligible persons, yeah, and whether the contract, everything else that are required for payments are included? I think that Bernard can be able to make. Now, there was also issue, of course, the issue about the hurry and why there was no budget provision. And I said, when these decisions were made, by last year, April, I think most of the budgets had been concluded. I remember the budget speech was read on 7th of April. So budgets must have been completed on 29th there. And it was also very difficult to reopen budget, I think, maybe that time. But I'm not the one who was pushing this. I don't know why. I can't be able to say exactly why it was. But I know by then, on 29th, we had already concluded most of the budgets. And it was difficult at that time to do this. Other than now including this in the supplementary estimate when the budgets were opened up. Now there is also the issue about why we overlooked the issue about the commercial aspect, and they talk about issues to do with the strategic and of course related to security. Now my answer to that is that while I can be able to assess things on a commercial basis, the issues to do with the issues on security and national security, I think we got a direction. And I think this direction is what we are trying to implement. So this came from National Security Council, from a memo. In fact, the time I have worked in government, this is the only time I have seen a communication from National Security Council. Because, of course, these are classified information. And I think what Treasury was doing is to implement that decision. Now, I couldn't ask myself as an officer question why this decision was taken that way. But as I said, the only comfort I had is that we were only paying the shares for $1, and of course reimbursing
It's of great concern to this committee.
Yes.
This matter of national security.
Yes.
And I mentioned to you, throughout the years, kwa sababu ya usalama wa nchi, masuala ya usalama wa nchi has been used as a shield when there are issues that need not to be revealed. The concerns in terms of national security has been used before. Do you think this could have been used in this matter to mask an unprocedural matter? And I ask this because you have talked about comfort, and I didn't want to ask this again, but I'd asked you earlier that CA wrote asking for a number of conditions to be met, and you said it didn't matter what CA said, because of national security, Treasury could go on regardless of the conditions set by Communications Authority. And I read to you a letter that says that CA gives an approval subject to certain conditions being met. But now it is emerging that even government could, in the process of this transaction, be either misleading or lying to the people called Jamhuri Holdings or Helios. Because, in a letter coming from Treasury that is dated on the 15th of August 2022, which is written to Jamhuri Holdings, it is titled Release of Escrow Documents. And the letter just spells out what this means in terms of release. However, this committee, knowing that Treasury never responded to Communications Authority on the matter of the conditions that they had set, Treasury is saying to Jamhuri Holdings that we hereby confirm that we have issued a letter of comfort to the authority. The authority here is Communications Authority, providing the comfort and assurances. This is one of the conditions that CA had given. And Treasury is saying to Jamhuri Holdings that they are confirming that Treasury has issued a letter of comfort to Communications Authority, providing the comfort and assurance referred in subparagraphs 1 and 2 above, and confirm that we will comply with the conditions referred to in subparagraph 3 above, and accordingly that the approval from the authority is now unconditional. Now, you are admitting as Treasury that an approval that you sought from CA was responded to with conditions being sent, then go ahead and lie to Jamhuri Holdings that you have written back to CA and given them the assurances. Do you find this irregular, or is it normal, as you told me, that it is okay to gloss over the conditions that were set by CA? Because they look important now in this letter.
No, I think as I said earlier, the consultations within government and government agencies do not necessarily be in form of letters. So there must have been some consultations with CA in that respect. So it may not have been a letter. There must have been meetings that were held with CA. Let me not confirm. But
thank you.
Yes.
But I'll put it to you that the Director General of Communications Authority actually, in exonerating the authority, said that they expressly set conditions that Treasury should have met for these approvals to happen, and Treasury did not communicate, or there is no track of any communication in response to those conditions, Engineer Kamau. But I just wanted to know your view on the conditions set by Communications Authority, whether you still believe, in the interest of national security, that you could have disregarded the conditions set by CA.
The issues raised by Communication Authority were not grave issues. I don't think they were grave issues.
But you're telling Jamhuri that you have actually met those conditions, because I think even Jamhuri would have needed that comfort.
Yeah, perhaps there could be a letter. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there is a letter to that effect.
Engineer, my last view on this, because as someone said, I think the more we try to unravel, the more now we get. So you've just told us here that even if there was no letter, there must have been a communication between Treasury and the Communications Authority. That government and government officials have many ways of communicating, not necessarily through letters. But again, on the other hand, you seem extremely confident that when it comes to the buyout with the Jamhuri Holdings, no meetings are held. But even when it is internal, even these are people that we meet over lunch in our offices, these are people that we interact with, then we're saying there must have been a meeting. Even if there was no letter, there must have been a meeting. But on the other hand, we're talking about the disposal of a strategic asset of this country that is of, we're talking about a payment of 6 billion shillings. You are certain, 100% certain, there were no meetings were held, there were no negotiations were held. Don't you really find that extremely interesting? Even yourself looking at it from an outside. Because you're telling us, fine, if it's here, then there must have been a meeting somewhere. There must have been a conversation. But for these others, this one, I am sure there was no meeting. Or do you wish to recall that statement and confirm that there were actually meetings were held, and tell us who are those people that held those meetings to negotiate for this particular buyout?
So I think, Chair, the issue here is you're talking about people who are not inside this country. And you are talking about, on the other hand, CA, who are part of the government. I think those are two different contexts. Okay. Because they are not here.
Fair point.
So, but what I am saying is, I didn't hear in my time that I have had the people from Jamhuri have visited Treasury. I haven't had. I didn't hear. Yes.
Respond in your own way. You're not bound to take this information, but it might surprise you that Jamhuri Holding Limited do actually have an office and an address within the parameters of this country. But that is information we are putting to you. You might either want to take it or not admit it. But respond, Engineer. Those were just for clarification.
I was just going through some of the questions that had been raised. Now, I think there are also some questions that were raised relating to the issue about security concerns, and that for Telkom, you still had a private party from 2007 to 2016, when Jamhuri also came in, and then from 2016, then you have also up to 2022. And then the question was, why is it now a security concern to get a private party to be part of the Telkom? I think that's basically the direction of the question. And I think maybe this is an issue that possibly National Security Council may have looked into. I don't know. But what I know is that telecommunication sector and the security concern, these have heightened over time. Issues to do with cyber security, issues to do with crime, is also associated with the issues to do with terrorism. I think all those issues have had to inform the telecommunication industry. And I think you may want to know, even maybe because I'm not privy to it, why the National Security Council denied the transaction between Airtel and the Telkom, the combination. Because you just got one line letter, that this transaction should not proceed. So the reason behind that, I can't tell, because we were not part of that, those discussions. We were not part of that meeting. Yeah. So maybe this is something that has come on board. Yeah. Then, Chair, maybe I also want to deal with the question raised by Honorable Kenan and also raised by Honorable Kitul about my background and integrity and whether I have the qualification. Perhaps I need to talk about that. I think the Honorable Member wanted to know when I came to Treasury, and I just want to say that I have been there for the last I was there between 2010 and 2023. So I was there for 13 years. And I was running public-private partnership for about 8 years. Then that involved a lot of financial management, because PPP is basically infrastructure finance. I may not have a CPA, but I'm an engineer, but I have done a lot of courses on financial management. And of course, I work with people who are CPAs, others economists, others who are. So I have multiplicity of. It's just like the way you would say PS should not be a PS treasury if you don't have an accounting background. But some things are just management issues, and I do believe that I am competent to be able to have held that position. Maybe this is what Honorable Kenan had questioned my qualification, whether I am the right person. I was the right person by then, but then I retired. I retired at 64, chair. So I have worked for many years in government, maybe about 40 years. So yeah, at 64, I retired at 64. So I have worked for more than about 40 years in government. So I understand the government, the way it works. And then there was also a question whether during the payment we actually made due diligence to make sure that whoever is paid. I think this was from Honorable Mwiti, and I have said that maybe to do with the payments, issues to do with the payments can be addressed by the Accountant General who is going to be here. But there is also a question that was raised by Honorable Mwiti about the escrow account, an escrow agent. And I think this is an important aspect of it. Now, the escrow agent who had been appointed by the Jamhuri Holdings and the National Treasury was a party to that agreement, was being done by Ajawara and Kana advocates. They were acting as the lawyers for Jamhuri Holdings. And I think the reason was because we are not going to sit somewhere and sign transfer agreements. You see, you have a payment to be made before you receive your transfer agreement document. So then you transfer, you pay the money, and possibly somebody refuses to sign the transfer, or you receive the transfer, you have not paid the money. So I think the issue of the escrow agent was to hold the documents until he confirms that the payments have been done, then he can release a signed document. And that was the lawyer called Ajawara Kana. He's the one who was acting lawyer on that perspective. And then I also want to confirm that all these agreements that we spoke about were all cleared by the Attorney General for signing. They went through them and they cleared all those documentation. Any comments they may have raised were addressed within the context of those documents. Chair, I want to go to the other question raised by Madam here. I think one of the questions that Madam raised was about loans, yeah, and whether these loans were forgiven, and I've said they are still in the books until government restructures Telkom and the rights of those loans, and if it's a government entity, writing off those loans will come to Parliament, because that's the Public Finance Management Act requires that that this comes to Parliament. I think you had also an issue about the buyer and seller. And I did indicate about the appearances of these persons. We didn't, but what I know, we received a power of attorney from one of the British lawyers, and those documents, the signed documents, together with the original power of attorney, are in treasury. So it's on the basis of that, I think the government confirmed that the person signing those agreements was the legal person empowered for Jamhuri Holdings to sign the agreements. Then
because I know you told us government is faceless, but who confirms? You said you think someone confirmed that this is the right person.
No, we confirmed the right person because we have the power of attorney.
Okay.
The signed document was sent together with the power of attorney.
Okay.
Yeah, from one.
So the gatekeeper here was who?
The gatekeeper.
Yes, to ensure that government of Kenya pays 6.1 billion to the right person. Who is the individual or the office where this decision is made?
I said, in terms of the agreements that were signed, the share purchase agreement, the shareholder transfer agreements, the person who signed on behalf of Jamhuri Holdings, there was a power of attorney. Yeah.
So the gatekeeper was the attorney.
That comes to treasury. The person who signed the power of attorney is not the person receiving the money, because the person receiving money is Jamhuri Holdings.
Yes. Yes.
The person signing on behalf of Jamhuri Holdings Limited is where he got the power of attorney.
Yes.
Now that power of attorney, together with the signed documents, comes to the
power of attorney granted by who? By the lawyer.
By the lawyer.
The lawyer is still in Jawar.
Not in Jawar, from UK. From UK.
It's a
UK firm.
Yes.
Yes.
And then on your end, who is the gatekeeper?
The gatekeeper is the Attorney General.
The Attorney General.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. What did you say, Mahesh?
I'm saying that he has answered that the gatekeeper is the Attorney General.
Yes, that's what we wanted to confirm.
Yeah. Well, correct.
Okay.
Correct. Mm.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted us to keep as note so that it will comprise of part of our report and what we demand way forward, because it's critical of part of inquiry. Because Mr. Stanley is explaining and has responded over issues of his qualification and the rest, this brings into question that this committee needs to demand a report of HR audit and suitability text index. Number two, we are talking about security, but are we taking or factoring in the security of the employees who are likely to lose their jobs because of the transactions which take place? That must be taken in critically, because were they consulted that the company was being sold? Probably there are some issues he cannot respond to that. But this committee must take into consideration that the security of the employees has nothing to do with the sale and the transfer of whatever thing is taking place. Therefore, how stable is Telkom?
It's still an adjoining question, engineer. Please don't get tired with us. I know you have dealt with this matter throughout, so you're very versed with it. Members need to get to the level you are. The question she's asking is what I had asked previously, asked differently. Is it your submission that the national security concerns were so grave that they override any other concern that would have been there, up to and including paralyzing Telkom as a commercial operation, shutting it down, and sending home the number of employees who would go home? Is that your submission? Then secondly, Treasury, through the person who was very responsible then at the highest level, must have been the cabinet secretary, told us that you're telling us that the gatekeepers were Attorney General on this side and our Kili somewhere in London. But it was the admission of Treasury to this committee that the buyer and the seller shared a lawyer in the name of Anjarwala and Khana.
Yes.
So is it your submission that Anjarwala was not acting for government of Kenya, that he cannot be seen to be the gatekeeper, that now the burden is transferred to the Attorney General? Or what was Anjarwala's role in this transaction?
I think, Chair, on the first question, on whether national security overrides everything else, I think to me that I can't be able to answer, because I don't know about issues on security. But I think in this particular instance, I think this was the case. If I say, because we were given direction by the National Security Council. Yeah? This instance, this is the case. Now, for the second one, the one you have spoken about, I think you are right, Chair, what you have said, that the lawyer who was acting on both parties, because he had to put the escrow documents together, was Jawara Kana. But I'm saying, even as we had lawyers, even when we have private lawyers, we still have a backstop of looking at the documents by the Attorney General. That's what I said. You are right in that context. Yes. Yeah. Yes. 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 Okay. So I think the other thing you did indicate is I think you did the last question that Chair you did raise, and I think this came from yourself. I think you did explain to ask exactly what my role is in that transaction. Now, and I want to do it in two ways, because if you look at the submission I made, you have areas where you assist, there are areas you advise. What do I mean? I mean, when you assist, your boss can tell you, I want us to do A, B, C, D. I want you to draft a letter to that effect. Is that correct? So, as myself, I'll write that letter, but I will do the advice that is required. But your boss can tell you, look, I want you to do a letter in this context. But you can mark something, the boss can mark something, can you advise me on this? Then I'll give my honest opinion on what it is I think needs to happen. So if you look at my brief, in this transaction, particularly like now these agreements, I did review the agreements and said, what we need to do, we need to seek a legal advice from Attorney General, and which we sought. From a legal point of view, it is okay. When you look at when we received the letter from Jamhuri Holdings on 21st of July, the CS marked the letter to me and said, please look at this and advise what we need to do. In that context, I did hold a session with the CS and told him, look, I think I advised, because of the gravity of this matter and because we had the Telkom had denied to move from a commercial point of view, we need to consult the executive office of the president. And that's a conversation. It's not a single decision. Yeah? But I can say I was involved in that process. Yeah? Of either advising or assisting. And I also don't act alone, because I have officers who work under myself. Oh, I think that advice, because what do you think we need to do? What do you think we need to do? Then say, okay, this is the way we need to do. And if you look at this, we also said, on this basis, we also require a cabinet approval. A cabinet approval, even though we got a national security direction, we require a cabinet to endorse this decision. Yeah? And we sought for that cabinet approval. Yeah. So, Chair, I think I have wrapped up most of the questions that had been raised.
You actually have, engineer, but on your last question.
Yes.
And this is purely speculating.
Yeah.
It's purely speculating. All communications around this matter, dated different dates by different agencies, have quite a unique reference number, TNT/ZZ 331/02, then apostrophe TY, I think to power 6 or something. I'm just speculating. Just curious. Is it normal practice, or could it be perhaps it was a regularization that we need to do this? So how do we do it? We work backwards. Then you have this letter, we have this letter, we have this letter, we have this letter, and perhaps we have people now sitting somewhere now to do all those documents to make sure they are properly aligned with the law. So that, do we need approval for Telkom from this? This is what we do. Again, just out of the blues, do you think that could have happened? Thank you very much, Engineer, and I think on behalf of the joint committees, yes, to really thank you for your patience. This is a very rigorous exercise. We hope to start it before lunch, so it means that you, just like us, did not even have a lunch break or a health break. And I want to really thank you for your candid presentation and patience in answering the questions. Again, we repeat, our objective is 1, to safeguard the interest of this strategic asset called Telkom. 2, to ensure that there was no abuse of Article 223. 3, to ensure that no money was lost, and if it was, then the people that actually did that to be held culpable. And lastly, to make sure we create a culture as a country of doing things according to the law and holding the interests of this great republic first and everything else second. And that's why we are sitting for long hours, listening to all the witnesses, trying to unearth this. And of course, it just becomes really interesting, and you've said it's part of government procedure. Our expectation was that for such a conversation of such a buyout, then there would be a negotiation, but there's some information you've given us which you rightfully said, you're not in office, so we'll be getting now to the people in office and finding out where these documents are, where this information is, so that we really educate, we really inform Kenyans on what they transpired along the time. And of course, I know you've also noticed the curiosity of all this being done around election time. I was just thinking, considering that the process was started in 2021 and the completion in terms of the payment done in August 2022, and in March 2023 the transfer of shares has not yet happened, and therefore I'm asking myself, what is the worst that could have happened if someone said, fine, Helios, you've given a notice of exit, we are having an election year, we have exchequer problems, just like we tell our pensioners or our counties or pending bills. We say the talk around all ministries everywhere is fine. We appreciate that you did this work. We appreciate that you have all the certificates signed. However, we are not able to pay because of exchequer. As we speak, most of our pensioners, the last time they were paid their pension was last year, November. So you have people that have worked all their life for government, they have not been paid their pension. Not because government does not want to honor the pension, but it says, no, we have exchequer issues, we have not collected. But this particular Jamhuri Holdings, aka Helios, just signals and says, I want to quit. And quickly, we are able to facilitate 6 billion shillings. During the time again, we are also doing the elections. To many Kenyans especially, that is quite sensitive. And that's why we are trying to call all those people of interest to find out exactly what happened. And if everything was done above board, well and good. If someone is lying to us, if someone is not providing the correct documents, these great minds will get to the bottom of it and a decision will be made. We thank you very much again and have a good evening.
Honorable members, thank you very much for your patience. Thank you very much to our staff. We appreciate you, the members of the Fourth Estate, and our special thanks this afternoon are to one Engineer Stanley Kamau, a career civil servant. Engineer, we did not intend to antagonize you by calling you out of retirement, so we were attempting as a committee to be as cordial, as professional, and as parliamentary as we can be. I could tell at some point you would get a bit antagonized and maybe a bit charged, but just know that this committee takes you as a witness and a friend to the committee. At best, you have confirmed some of our worst fears, at best. At worst, you have led us deeper into the rabbit hole that everyone has been leading us into, a very dark rabbit hole where no one seems to be able to place the buck at a certain desk. The can yet again has been kicked down the road, the buck has been passed. This committee will endeavor to do what is required to get to where this buck can be rested, and the can will end up landing somewhere. But we do appreciate your time, especially being that you're coming out of requirement to appear before this committee. And we want to just get your goodwill, Engineer Stanley Kamau, that if required, if new information is required, that your door is still open for correspondence, even if it is not in-person appearances. We appreciate your appearance today, and thank you very much. Engineer, you can now actually take your leave at your pleasure, so that members can consult on just one or two housekeeping issues. If also the members of the Fourth Estate who have been very patient with us would also, as engineer takes leave, you can also give us a few minutes to do some housekeeping.